and whatever I see is smiling at me. Love is who I am. Hello there, beloved Ascension pioneers, and welcome to this video with me where I will talk about the beloved completion, the new heaven and the new earth. So what does that mean? I would like to start by saying that a lot of us have been shifting through so many veils of illusion at this time that it's almost like there's this, cracking of the walls of what was between the feminine and masculine essences as they were playing out in the levels of core creation self. And what that means is that this furthered out into numerous worlds of creation, Earth being just one of these stations for such an experience. And as those of us who are in the path of mastery of the new, having these experiences, we've been learning that from everything that we've been moving through, we're actually now starting to integrate this earth level mastery, which for a lot of us, it might still feel new. So in this video, I will talk about a sense of completion from a perspective of, that wholeness when there's a meeting of happening, meeting ourselves and others halfway. And what does that really mean? Because there's something that we're all coming into, especially Ascension Pioneers, because we are the pathfinders and the new way showers. There's this happening now when the selfless love, the selfless service meets the human love, meets the human embodiment, meets the love of the earthly realm, how to love on the earth, that you're still coming from the perspective of selfless service, unconditional love, devotion to all, and yet not to your own detriment. This is something that we cannot achieve without mastering polarity, which is the integration of divine feminine and masculine. So because of that, all of us had to move through the levels of core wounding. What does that mean? A lot of people, especially in the New Age communities and the spiritual circles, have been talking about this in terms of different relationships, such as soulmate, twin flame, karmic partners, the unrequited love, all of that. Almost like different aspects of our experience. But what these actually represents are levels of our own mastery as our soul decides to move through in this realm of incarnation and earthly experience. So for those of you who are really feeling that strong call to become your own cosmic beloved, to master your own self, and I do have a beautiful course on becoming our cosmic beloved, claiming that masterful polarity of the unified masculine and feminine as essences within us, so this is then reflected as that stable, masterful, embodied, grounded incarnation, becoming our strong pillar, then what was happening is that for this path, we had to go through a lot of trials and tribulations, and a lot of us are now saying, oh, we're tired from this. This was a long journey. We're almost feeling like the bells ringing from the other side, and I'm going to later talk about such a word that I heard just recently, which was a turnover. And what does this mean? So for a lot of us, why we feel now really tired after this phase is because it really required a lot of work. This work is, in a way, it was a work of, I've been writing it here, the data gathering. So a lot of us have had these mission stationaries, almost like this mission statement, mission calling from within you, this longing for living out our mission, not just talking about ourselves from our personal lives perspective, and being in a certain relationships and wanting a certain twin flame or soulmate, but really having the longing to fulfill a certain segment of our mission. And a lot of us have been referring to that as being all of who we are. And yet now we feel like this turnover into something completely new as what we want to experience. I've been reading most of the books from Dolores Cannon, and she spoke about volunteer souls a lot of times from the perspective of them not wanting to be too engaged in the earthly realms. For example, not wanting to have children because they're supposed to bring karma. And I do not use this word very lightly because there's a lot of misunderstanding still happening around the word karma. But a lot of souls who've come from other realms or directly from that new source consciousness into earthly physical embodiment, not from the wheel of reincarnation, but from other stargates and other portals, other realities, there was this programmed not to get too enmeshed. And that program for the data gathering, for what we needed to do at this time, was particularly placed there for a reason. So a lot of the times we were resisting certain aspects of how much we want to engage and participate in our earthly reality and experience, how much of ourselves we want to share in relationships, how much we want to give, and on what level. So for that reason, a lot of us have been mostly meeting this aspect of ourselves, which was focused on service. I know this was so for my path. So as I started my awakening, the whole experience went from me moving into my awakening and ascending realm, which was, wow, the universal love, the love of the truth of one, the unity consciousness. But then we met up with the aspect of, okay, how do we bring that all down? How do we permeate with that? How do we penetrate with that love of one, and to be of that service through all of our different layers and all of our coatings, and going through that core wounding, which is the process when the light starts to descend in our human form. We have to go through that core wounding on all levels. Otherwise, it's almost like going to create a blockage. We will say we're going to stop here and we want to skip steps, but this cannot happen because it does precipitate in its own way, and it has its, in our physical ascension, human form integration, it has a certain process and unfolding through which it needs to go. Otherwise, there is no such occurrence. So when we went through that, it was tiresome because this program of the mission of doing this work, of doing this preparation work, was very intense for us. And that's why we were met up with many challenging relationships, with many intensities in human forms or situations that brought us forward through this core wounding process, is because we simply wanted to go first. And that's why my channel is called Ascension Pioneers. A pioneering in itself means, you're a pioneering soul. You go through this first, so you pave the way, you establish the way for those who will choose to follow. They don't follow you, they follow the establishment of the new energy that we were actually gateways to. So when people now are going to say, wow, a new wave is coming, it's more like we are the new wave. We are the wave because we have been participating with the engagement of this consciousness streaming through us. We were the life forms to bring that about. And for a lot of us, just being here on the planet was enough. And that means doing this inner work, which in fact is not just work of personal self-help, it goes beyond the levels which you can physically sometimes even be aware of. So a lot of this, if you've read books from Dolores and having this come through form of hypnosis, was many uncoverings that for a lot of us we're consciously aware of. For me, I don't have to be hypnotized to know these things. I'm just receiving them as automatic downloads, and straight away I know what they mean for me, and then I have to go, of course, through my human processing to apply them on my daily experience-based level. So for me, my beloved path was, in a way, it consisted of many relationships, and these relationships were coming in form. That's how it was for me. It wasn't just one person and I was really into that person and they were the mirror for all. For me, it was each person came in my life. And for me as a female, that was mostly the male part of the equation. And with each one, I had to spend a certain time frame with and do a certain work. And although sometimes the mind wanted to control that and said, I don't want this, I would rather just escape, there was no such thing. And that's why once my own beloved I am said, you got to remember our purpose. It's just the way it is. The seeding needs to take place exactly that way. And a lot of the times, maybe we were frustrated and it was hard for us. It wasn't easy, especially because we didn't always have the help. But this turnover is bringing more of the change in the way this is now happening for us. There will be more flow because we've completed this. A lot of us, I'm not saying everyone, because it's a processing, it's coming in waves. But for those of you who are feeling strongly that you've come to a certain point where there's the threshold needs to be crossed, and you had a big shift, especially recently when Earth was going through a huge transformation. I've had people having really interesting symptoms, like feeling like they're pregnant, or the bloated belly, or many physical symptoms, because Earth is going through such a huge transformational change at this time, and we are too. And those of us who are maybe in human relationships and we're participating, for example, in sexual alchemy, you have to know that sex is what that sexual experience of who we are brings about every single thing within that core wounding. So everything and every player within the scheme of, the great scheme of things in our personal reality was encoded with the specific information that we needed to go through a certain phase of our life, of the cosmic beloved journey, is how I like to call it, which means the mastered polarity of the feminine masculine forces within us, so that we become these beautiful luminaries in human form. Because luminaries are not gender specific, they're just energies, they're just lights, right? So those of you who are feeling this sense of now almost like this stage of this completion, that doesn't mean now your life ends and you go somewhere else, or you don't have to do anything for the rest of your life but party. Yeah, we could, but we always know that our journey here as pioneers is specifically oriented towards that service of serving through our path blazing, our trail blazing. So the earth core level is what those of us are feeling now. And what does this mean? I want to explain in this video. First of all, those people who are only moving in the light, who are talking about this as being, we're moving with the light, we're only fusing with our light body, we're moving in our light body. Like we're moving in our light body form, just the light, right? So for a lot of these people, they had to, because we have still duality playing out on this planet as we're transitioning, they had to use techniques, and we all had to when we were in that stage of our development and our spirituality and our ascension. We had to use tools of shielding ourselves, and coating ourselves with the white light and all these different tools and techniques, right? But what's happening for those of us who have chosen the earthly embodiment process, which is not just the ascension pathway, but the descension, so that we can actually live a path of sacred phoenix transformation, which is the merge. It's almost like you become the gateway for source on the planet. Those of us have been needing to go through this earth core level, which means that the embodiment of your soul is now in your physical form, acting as this shield. So the inner body, now your inner body intelligence matches your soul intelligence, because you have enough soul encoding, enough soul quotient of that soul frequency. Because as you know, when you meet people, they embody very tiny percent of soul. They might say, my soul wants this and that. And people who are more living from the carnal, earth-based, physical, just physical only expression, they embody very little percentage of that soul encoding. So those of us who have been moving that soul encoding in our physical bodies, in our physical form, are now feeling that our bodies are beginning to act as that radiant shield. And I want to tell you about a dream I had that actually showed me this. So this body intelligence is moving of that higher self into our physical body form, so that our body becomes this shield. What this means is also that a lot of the guidance we're having is more earth specific. So in my past, I was more that divine knowing, like straight knowledge, which I still have. But now, as my knowledge more descended, as my soul is bringing more of its light encoding in the physical form, I'm having more earthly related experience of guidance. Like for instance, my dreams are very physical, right? You're bringing yourself to the level of earthly experience in a way. So our earth experiences in itself are becoming more of our guidance. Like for me, my dreams have been such a strong emphasis of my spirit guidance, and it's more physical than I was used to. But we had to move through these, because the dream realm is often very astral in its essence, and a lot of people, as they were moving through the astral, they were having experiences many battles, which a lot of people described as the astral war and things like that, which is something that needs to dissolve from our consciousness now. And watch the video from Jeffrey Hoppe from Saint Germain, that delusion of evil and Satan, which we just have to walk on. That's a really beautiful video which addresses that. So I don't want to talk about this in this video because it's too much to share already in this one update. So what this means is that our psychic nature, our perceptive nature, more receptive nature of that feminine masculine is more merged. So that means we're not having these false imprints, because a lot of the old psychic energy had a lot of imprints, a lot of distortions. So someone tuned into you and they could get a lot of these filters through, and it wasn't coming from the spirit purity. And a lot of us who've been keeping that purity intact through our choice, of course, we felt like, oh, we don't want someone to take away my purity. I had this all my life. I was so pure. And that's why sometimes I didn't want to share. I didn't want to go out there with my energy, because I felt it's going to be abused or someone will take that away from me. But they really can't once you master it. Only when we don't have the awareness of how to work with our light, which means that love in itself is who we are, but we're also that awareness. And with the love meeting and marrying the truth becomes wisdom, right? So the goddess of wisdom, Sophia, is that wisdom of all once we master that integration. So that means that this intelligence the light body is a merge process. It's not we're moving in our light body only, so it's merging with our human body, and that's why our guidance might feel more earthly at times, and our psychic receptivity will be more through these senses or hearing, but in a different way than it used to be. It's a process, and when you start like observing yourself more and more, you will feel that. You will feel, wow, I used to have this, but now it's come back, but in a new way, because it descended in your human form. It's not just up there. And that's why, like I said, for me, this guidance, a lot of it occurred through dreams, and they were so vivid and so specific to my now. So remember, when I always share, and I have this course, I have 7 sacred initiations plus the advanced one on our spirit mastery, on mastering ourselves. And these mastery courses were developed for us to integrate our spirit into our physical form. So I talk about this in my first course about how to align with spirit. And spirit is always the guidance in the now. It reflects all, but in the now. It's not projecting to the past, future. And a lot of the psychic guidance of the old was past lifetimes, past realities. While in this new earth, new mastery self, it's the integration of all. It's the future self, the past self, but you're living it as a merged experience self. And this meets on the level of where you are now. So your home is where you brought it forth. We've brought our homes to here, to who we are as beings on earth. So we don't have to go and tune into the Palladian consciousness or the Syrian aspect of who we are, the Lyran gateway and all of that. Whatever it is, there's many gateways. And it's just that all of this, as our multidimensional experience is being brought forth in our form, and this light quotient meeting our human form halfway, that's what we're actually experiencing. But it cannot occur without a polarity mastered through our feminine and masculine self. So with us having this experience, we're going to feel we're not just protected by spirit or angelic forces or whatever it is from the level of being at the right place at the right time, being positioned, being guided by or guarded by those outside energies and influences. Like sometimes people say the guardian angel comes in a certain form or something like a force just pushing and pulling you. What's happening now is that your body is that force, and I'm sure you're going to have, if you observe very eloquently, you will see those experiences. I've had a lot of them, like someone just removing from me, and I was just observing them because they just couldn't do something, to me, not to me, but you know what I mean. They were like stoked. Why, and it's because my life force is so intelligent already that it gave them that information. I didn't have to be shielded from the outside anymore. I know for a lot of us who've been following the Ascended Masters teachings from the past, now we need to relearn, open up to new levels of consciousness because we're becoming more advanced. And that which we knew at a certain fragment of our journey now has to be rewritten. It's who we are. We need to become living libraries. And the living library means the encoding and the activation in the now, which will be specific to where you are and how much of your home frequency you're embodying at this time. So I'm not saying this is for everyone. What I share now, it won't resonate with everyone. But for those parts of the guidance that do, please take them and consider them. How can you apply them and how you're already applying them in your physical journey? Because these updates that I do are meant to serve that. They're not meant to teach you. I don't believe in teaching. It's just I have to go through this. I have to experience. And when I do, the light quotient of who I am brings that out. And I kind of like, when some people say they lash out at others and they're kind of like needing to outpour that or information, what I have to share with you, I just put this as a creative burst here in the videos to assist and to maybe make things clearer. But it will resonate to those of you who are also having a little bit, at least, of that experience is felt in your reality already. So I'm going to give you one example of this core level inner body intelligence, and sometimes people call this our inner gypsy. My friend called it like that, the inner witch. And we're becoming more of that sacred witch, just feeling and knowing things. I don't know, just having them on such a earth level. You don't have to even see visions or whatever. You just know things, but you also bringing them in your body. And it's just such a profound wisdom that it's like the universal wisdom meets the earth practical wisdom. And this is what happens as a sacred marriage of those two polarities. So I had this dream when there was a psychopath, right? It was this man who was going after women. So he had always this prepared act, how he approaches them. And when he came behind me and I was standing there, he was already starting that speech like, oh, I'm gonna, this is wrong. He was saying something like to get me hooked to him. And I just needed to turn around. And when he saw me, he went like, He couldn't do anything. He stopped, and from the moment he just loved me, the love transformed him. He couldn't do anything, and he, as himself, was still what he was. He was still doing that, but with me, he wasn't able to, because I had this natural shield of, you know, how he was with me specifically. And although he, on that level, was still a psychopath, if I can use that term, he wasn't that with me, and I knew that in the dream. And I was asking myself, well, he still is that, but with me he isn't. So, you know, what's this meeting point? And this showed me this, that this inner body intelligence and inner body protection and shielding moved in our body. So our experiences will vary now. They're going to become different. So observe for that. You know, don't try to make it happen. It's just a natural occurrence. The more light intelligence of your life force you're able and allowing to bring into your physical human life form. Okay, so what's happening with this witch concept is that we've just talked about this with my friend today, and her name is Katrina, and she's from Sacred Mysteries, so I recommend her channel as well. It's kind of like complementary forces working together, so that integrated Magdalene is the new archetype. And we were saying today, wow, the Magdalene priesthoods, you know, the Magdalene sisterhoods, you know, the Magdalene sisters in our human form as well, from the encodings of our soul lineage, the royal soul lineage, not just the soul lineage, but also the physical lineage, the human lineage. So we've talked about the sisterhood, and we were all goosebumpy. And today, as I was in my contemplation mode, there was just streams and streams of this light information coming through. So this integrated Magdalene is the essence of courage. And the female, the empowered feminine archetype, which of course is always married to her inner divine archetype of the masculine, she's becoming the essence of this courage, no longer the wounded feminine. And this was the essence of the sacred sisterhood of the rose. And that's why now a lot of the guidance that's coming through is about roses. I mean, I think it was in the beginning of this week or last week, I don't remember specifically, but I made a post on Instagram about the essence of pink and the essence of the rose. And from that day, I saw that everywhere, and people were posting these activations of the sacred rose, and they were everywhere, and people had these experiences or dreams. And it's always a unified experience for those of us who are moving as the first wave into that. So the sisterhood of the rose is no longer just something like a memory of the past or the Atlantean times, or maybe times even on other realities, but a lot of us are here to bring that physically in our own form in the sisterhood, which was missing for quite a long time. There was a lot of infiltrations coming through, and I've experienced with my friends specifically, or with many others, but specifically when the energy of the two, when they connect, they create this gateway opening for a new information to start streaming through. There's a lot of infiltrations that want to come through. So for example, one of these was the coming of the infiltrations through YouTube, or people spreading lies and rumors and gossips to try to keep people apart, those of us who are connected and doing this work. And we were actually just laughing and saying, how funny, don't they know we're friends? It's a waste of time. But there's still a mirror for that infiltration. It's almost like that which stands in between, but it doesn't really, because what it does is, if we had a belief in that, if we still said, oh, is that the truth? If we had these doubts and fears, otherwise it just doesn't exist. And because of our higher self moving into our inner guidance system, in our light intelligence, in our life force, how it expresses in our human form, that cannot happen anymore. It might still exist, but doesn't create anything. Remember the dream. The cycle may be still a cycle, but with you in that essence, in the physical embodiment, cannot happen. Okay, so the integrated Magdalene aspect of the courage is something that is in vice versa to the wounded feminine of the past. And I want to talk about this example because just this confirmation came through yesterday when we watched a movie. And I always watch movie with awareness, because they always give me a message of where I am also, and where because I am at the core creation level, which means we're picking up on things that are for the collective of those of us who are in this path. In a way, they're true, not just for me. So the message of the movie was that there was a wounded feminine who in a way worshipped and idolized something. In that example, a past husband that passed over, and instead of that, she could have a life, a new love, a turnover. She still kept on that illusion, which was someone's not even there. So there was the wounding of the feminine because of either an idealization of something of the higher nature, maybe even now in the spiritual circles when people meet a certain person who would be their twin flame, and they idolize that person and everything becomes about them, and there's an obsession and a worship happening to that person instead of bringing that energy back forth to yourself. And because of that, we cannot see what's in front of us. So that wounding of the feminine occurred because of that false utopian idolization. But when the feminine in that scene decided she will no longer be wounded, she was able to accept love in the physical human form. In that example, through a male coming in, able to support, provide, be there, be present with her in the physical, in her now. So therefore, there was this choice. And this was a message that now, the wounded feminine in the past, the feminine is no longer willing to be wounded so that the male principle could be rising at her expense, at her own detriment, to her own detriment, which means that we were allowing for eons and eons of time for the woman to kind of hide at least a little bit, to at least a little bit close the rose petals, close off a bit if someone saw you as too big, as too grand, and they couldn't fit you into the reality of the world. And a lot of us have been mocked, or we were accused of certain things, and I was called many things as well by the guys, by the males who weren't able to meet me on all levels. And for them, when you step into their their wounded egos, they get very defensive and they start even insulting you in some cases. It can be from minor to very major things playing out. And the feminine, in a way, because she was so selfless in her love and giving and opening, that's the feminine principle of all of them, within all of us. Doesn't mean just males and females, but the feminine principle felt responsible for holding that space of that selfless love. So that means that now we have to have the courage, awaken that Magdalene essence, which stands for courage, to meet that selfless love. That meeting halfway means that where the selfless love meets the self-love. And watch my video on universal love and self-love as one, because it does give reference to what I'm just sharing now. So that means that the male principle within us, and how it's playing out in our relationships, needs to start rising on its own without us feeling the need to withdraw or to make spiritual propositions and do spiritual work for them so they could become more ours, when in fact nobody is ours. We're not claiming anyone, we're not owning anyone, even if we believe that is our twin flame or that is our perfect to be person and that's it. Because what we need to know is that the true love that we are, something that those of us on this path, is what we were becoming. That essence needed to blossom and become that sacred rose within ourselves. And that gave us this strength now, this courage to be that essence, to be the truth of love on all levels. Not sometimes, hiding it. Sometimes people do it to keep the peace, but only on the surface. And we're not being truthful enough to some people, or we're hiding our feelings and emotions. I used to do that because I believed I need to be so selfless, so caring, and always come from just the higher perspective, but not from my human perspective as well. So we negated a bit of that aspect. To most humans who were moving from downward path upwards was the opposite, because they were going at it in a different live stream. And that's what I'm saying. We're meeting now each other halfway. Those of us descending from up to down, and those of us climbing upwards and ascending. And this meeting place of our one being integrating and becoming synthesized and unified. What that means is that now the selfless love and the higher realms need to meet and marry also with these more descended aspects or fallen aspects even. Descended doesn't mean fallen, but the aspects, when we say fallen, means that something that which has forgotten of its true nature as divine love, something that which has forgotten what it truly is. So what this means, that when you're so wounded, let me give you one example, that you cannot take it anymore, then certain times you just lash out. And I had this dream recently when I just couldn't take it. I couldn't take being a doormat and a wallflower. I just lost it, and I was like, going at a rampage, which is in a way also Magdalene essence, which is when you're like, no, heck no, you're like a badass in your essence and expression of it. So that means that you're no longer willing to put up with this wounding because you've decided to not be wounded anymore. It's a decision. It's only a choice. And as we were playing out these encodings, and remember, when people meet you halfway and when people come in your life, it's never just about you and them. It's about what they bring to you. For you, it will always be about that. and for you to be able to see what kind of mastery you gain from it, and that moment will be peace. You'll already have the resolution and knowing why everything that occurred already and why it actually did. So they bring a specific encoding for you to decode. It was that way for me. We needed to decode through those faulty programs and beliefs that were creating this separation between our inner feminine and masculine, and the heart and the mind, the spirit and matter, it's all one, right? So we needed to decode that. That's why we were receiving these imprints from others, even for us to resolve them, to see through them, to resolve, to transcend, and to become something new, the birth of the new. So I actually, what I did is I did a beloved reading just recently, and I was really mastering the art of these readings for quite a while now. I was actually preparing behind the scenes for my new chapter, which you stay updated. I will have an announcement at the end of this video, what's that new that's coming in. So that beloved reading showed me this withdrawal of the feminine, because the feminine has done so much work already that she's thrived. She cannot go any further anymore, because that aspect is also where collectively we're at. When you look at the nature of awakening, even, there's so many women who are claiming they're goddesses, and now it's time for the masculine to do that work, but without us feeling responsible for it, and without us feeling, okay, we're gonna do that, we're gonna stay quiet, and we're gonna have that selfless love just to please them. You know, if it's playing out between men and women, you know, I'm just saying that it's also playing out on an essence level. So that's where we need to take a look at things first. So the reading revealed to me that a lot of the feminines, how we're gonna feel now, or if you're maybe a male that's more aligned with the feminine essence, we're gonna feel that need to withdraw from that, from those dramas, from something that maybe your oppositions are going through, and they're still in that clash of wills. They're still choosing things from ego, not from the heart space of cosmic unified heart. And you're no longer responsible for it, and you still need to express your feelings about it. You're not saying, I'm loving so selflessly that it's going to go away, the boob is going to go away, when we're so selfless. If that selfless does not need the aspect of you which is self-love, then again it's illusion, it's still distortion. So I had a dream, and I think I mentioned this before, that a woman was giving me guidance. So this aspect of me, which was the guidance self, was saying, be careful of how you connect with Neptunian energy. And today I've just had this epiphany. Of course, the Neptune represents universal, spiritual, higher love, right? And this higher soul love. But if we see everything on an earthly level through that, and only that, we're again missing the point, and we're suffering in our human experience, and we're being stepped on and stepped over because of that. Again, we're not aligned with our true universal self, which is all of it. Spirit is a sphere. It's all of the experiences. So the beloved reading showed me of how now the masculine carries its own burden. We're no longer carrying the burden for the other part of the polarity, because that's the only reason how the two halves can meet. Otherwise, it will always be one pulling another like up. And when we're pulling someone up, we're actually stalling our own growth and evolution, because we're saying, we're waiting for you so I cannot, you know. And we actually, when we're truly in our unified self, we don't do that. We continue to grow in our own way. We continue to create in our own playful way without feeling, oh, maybe I should stay a few steps back to please or help another. That's old consciousness. New consciousness is playful, you always in the now. Choose from that space of joy. And we still don't get that. If it feels heavy, if your service, what you believe is to service to others, selfless service to others, feels not joyful, it's not coming from the new template. I know that a lot of the old programming about selfless service was sacrificial, like be the sacrificial lamb, you know, be that. And it wasn't really the truth of what we perceive now, because we've already transcended that. That's why we don't feel that and the need for that anymore. So there was this essence of selfless love meeting that personal love halfway. And for me, what recently came out is I really needed to speak out my feelings. I was revisiting my past of when my awakening actually began, when I left a relationship, and it didn't explain how it made me feel. I just left, and I didn't even want to deal with it. I did my own inner work. It was fine. I was fine. And a lot of the times we end up saying this, well, I'm fine. I'm going to survive. I'll get over it. Don't worry, right? Because I'm so powerful. I don't need to, you know, speak my emotions, because I already transcended them anyway, because I'm selfless service and selfless love oriented. But still, we forgot about the aspect of our human inner child that says, hey, you know, I have a voice, and in this moment, the voice is anger, or resentment or frustration in that moment. And because we didn't hear that voice for so long, it just got more pent up, and we got this built up energy that now, like, wants to come out as that rampage, the empowered courage Magdalene. And knowing that when she yells, I'm not saying you're going to yell at someone, but as she yells with that rage, and that's not the rage that is, darkness based, it's just a rage can also be celebrating your essence of, just embracing what it is, and how does it feel to be human, and how does it feel to be angry as a human, for example. And if we were denying that within ourselves, then we weren't embracing the totality of the rainbow of the human experience. So this came out really strongly that the feminine now needs to be more in her luscious self, what she already created. A lot of us already did this work. We created and put these templates, and we started doing our work, sharing what we know, sharing our wisdom, for example. Now, the other part now needs to move into that in their own way, and they need to find integrity and justice for it. So this reading was very specific to that, and the passion that we kind of felt for maybe another person relationship, or in general for the beloved journey, that passion actually created that sexual alchemy so that the old things were able to come out. Without it, there is no such magic. It's what creates, right? So the meeting of the halfway is how this selfless love comes into our human form through personal love as well, and through establishing boundaries and speaking our truth as well, not just universal truth. For me, that was the path. I think I even have it in my astrological chart, the Sagittarius, the universal truths and principles, but then needing to meet the Gemini self, which is the other pole, right? Of the nodes, which is then go to relationships, speak it out, share it in a multiversal way as well. So I recently talked to someone, and because I gave them this perspective first through the higher perspective and unconditional love, and then the day after I gave them also my human perspective and how I felt with my feelings, and they accused me of having a split personality, and I really laughed, and I said, okay, that's one way of putting it. And that's how often we've called these things in the past, and even our old psychology is just, it's already outdated. I'm not going to say distorted, but it's outdated. And a lot of the books, even about our psychological nature, are going to need to change and be rewritten as well. Because the split personality versus the feeling of multidimensional reality experience is something we need to think about. We're actually just merging these perspectives. And I haven't yet said now to the person, well, I've already mastered that. But we're kind of like I'm saying, we're at the initial stages. We're at the first stages of that meeting taking place. For the first time in my life, I was starting to feel, wow, how it is to be human in a way that's empowered human. Not being just an awakened human, right? But then the Ascension light created this within us. Now we want to be an empowered human who just, like that warrior, but without fighting. The warrior that just expresses, creates the experience and expresses what the experience was all about for them. So it's not a split personality disorder. It's just everything we're feeling, it's always in parallels, right? So when you exist now and as I speak, there's a parallel to my experience at the same time. And like I said, we're layers of the onion. And that's how we're even going to maybe speak. One day you share one perspective, then through your own sexual alchemy, something else, and it's deep and it comes out. And people won't always have the understanding why it's like this, but you need to. So we need to stay true to ourselves, why for us it's coming out this way. So now I want to mention this turnover, right? Because this turnover is connected to a lot of us having this data gathering experience when the mission, our mission is shifting. And remember, I made a video about, I think I talked about the add-ons to our star missions. A lot of us had this when we had those imprints, when we met them, when we decoded them, false matrix belief systems, and the falsity between the males and females, which is the essence of masculine and feminine playing out in order to reach that maturation of unity. We're actually reporting. We were always like this, the bank of the vault of that knowledge. Our stream of life force didn't just go, I'm meeting my higher self and downloading guidance from that. We also reverberated out our own light codes of our experiences here on Earth and reverberating them out to other systems. This was a unified process, a mutual reception of both, just like in our relationships, right? It was always a mutual exchange, even if you felt, wow, that person, is so beyond what I already know in my awareness. It doesn't matter. It's still meeting halfway somehow. There's an aspect of that. And when we see that, when we're able to find that missing spot, then like I said, peace comes out. We're at peaceful, harmonious resolution to what is the truth of it. So a turnover means that now this data gathering, due to the integration of our mastery, is kind of like, it's not coming to an end, but it's turning over to this completely different feel to who we are, how we want to now, from our perspective, and then now live our missions on a new upgraded level, because a lot of us are arriving at that point, or have arrived, or it just feels like, what is beneath those doors, and I don't know, right? And it's still, if it's still feeling awkward and weird, just go with it. But this turnover also means, if, for example, you've had a lot of energy investments in what you did, and a lot of selfless service, and a lot of things, and you felt you weren't met halfway in your human physical experience, all of a sudden, all these little, like, it's like, if you imagine a savings, little piggy savings, right? Like a little piggy for saving up the money, like coins. You're putting coins inside, right? But you're not seeing them where they're going. It's just still one piggy, right? But one day it's like the pig is so full, it breaks, and you have all this money coming out. Like, wow, kind of like that. The turnover is that shift, what happens with the quotient of our soul reality and soul embodiment, that was kind of like adding up bit by bit, layer by layer. So all of a sudden, like, breaks through. And when we have enough of that energy, this turnover takes place. And there's also, this is in alignment with the greater turnovers and the galactic shifts at the same time. And I share more about this in my Cosmic Purchase workshops when I talk about these greater galactic shifts. So this data gathering, due to the integration, the mission now is shifting from our own personal mastery to living our mastery. So we were acquiring our mastery, and once this beloved completion is intact, we're feeling, what's left then? I've already did that mastery on that level. It's now you're living it. Now we're going to bring it to every aspect of our reality, from the spaces where we live, the people we meet, places we're going to go or travel to. It's still in process. It's unfolding, but this is actually, it's going to come from for each one of us on a different level, how it really fits us. And again, it's something we cannot force. It's just a natural occurrence. But this, due to the integration, and I've written here, the personal initiations via relationships were a part of that. And that's why I said, for me, a lot of the energy that I feel is just, I'm just tired of this. And at the same time, the higher self, the me, and the bigger level knows there's perfection in what I've experienced. And why was it so fast? Simply because I'm able to. And I was told this when I started this, very early after starting this, what I'm doing. I was told that I was chosen, self-chosen for this, because I knew I could do it, because I had the most requirements. I've met the most requirements that were, needed for what I do. And this is just what I do. This is just my own imprint and input into the collective data gathering. So this personal initiation through relationships is actually what got us on this new level of mastery. So initiation through relationships is our new guruism. In the Aquarian age, we're no longer going to be in that Piscean, withdrawn, only inner initiation. We're going to move through being initiated through relationships. And a lot of us were pathfinders and harbingers of this path, which is the new path, which is you are being enlightened through relationships. It's not just the Buddhic enlightenment, right? So I talk about this in my Cosmic Beloved course. All of this is in great depth. But I want to talk about now the Beloved readings. This is my announcement for today, because this is something that just after doing that Beloved reading for what I'm sharing today and where the energies are, because you can read them universally, and then also we're each personally where we at. So when I was in training, I actually had to master a lot of the guidance of tarot, how to apply with my own understandings. If you're following me on Instagram, you will start noticing that I'm beginning to post more of the tarot cards. There's like an explanation for a certain tarot card, but with a higher consciousness, because a lot of the tarot is just a basis. It's like a template, but we can expand on it. We can layer on it from our higher perspectives, which is now more multidimensional. And that's what I was doing for a while. And I was mastering a lot of this, and to read energy. So when I was going through my own experiences, to each one of them, I was actually seeing how it's laid out in the cards, how it's in the physical, how that mirrors what's felt and what's really experienced. And it was profound. And through that, I was actually really learning. And I didn't even think about what I'm doing. It was just a lot of it, a lot of investment, a lot of energy investment went into this preparation, and I didn't even know. No one told me, well, you're preparing for something. And today, after doing this reading, all of a sudden, it's like such a bolt of lightning comes, and it's like, this is your next step. You're going to do these readings. I'm like, oh no, what? I didn't know, but I was so excited. So in my personal relationships, my beloved integration path came always through personal experience. What does that mean? That I always shared and only was able to share from the level that I already mastered and embodied. So for example, when I began with readings, I didn't do them up until this point, but when I began, I was in the ascension pathway, right? In that stage. And the readings that are provided on that level for people were ascension readings. I think they were even called ascension readings. I don't remember. But I was actually helping and assisting people, ascension pioneers on this path, to reconnect with their overall kind of sense of where they're energetically and what's kind of like their mission on a bigger cosmic sense. And this became too wide for me, right? And when I started the descension process, all of a sudden, like, I'm not doing readings anymore. I'm not doing that. It didn't resonate anymore because I changed. I wouldn't be authentic with myself. I wouldn't be in integrity, in alignment with where I'm physically. And if I still kept insisting in that, for me, it felt old, which means that it's just not somewhere where I am now. So when this beloved path and mastering this inner feminine masculine essence self became more physical for me, more tangible. I knew how to master it, how to witness it and call it out as this aspects and how to live them. This became so apparent and the readings flew much easier and I knew and I could have more understanding. So I feel it's a great calling and assistance. If you're interested, these beloved readings will be all about how you and your personal, where you are now, because it's always your now, right? How you're integrating this, your inner masculine, your inner feminine, how you're playing this out as a joint communication and connection between the two, and how this is playing out, of course, how you can apply it or are applying it already in your human personal relationships. These are not psychic predictions. These are actual readings of the energy that what's taking place with you, how you're merging with that. It's all about mastery of that, becoming a master of polarity. This is what these readings are about. And I always felt this is my calling and my path. But I couldn't do that if I wasn't at that stage, if you understand. And because my own experience always came through the knowledge of my higher knowing and then had to go through it with a direct mirror in my physical experience, that is why I was so able to synthesize it. Because I always knew that this was, in a way of synthesis. So those of you who are interested, go to my personal services page. Just go to my blog, my page, Set Up Being a Light. There's a personal services mark. And there's also a link shared on YouTube, where there's information boxes there. And you can find it down below as well. So what this means is that if you don't want to, for example, have a Skype session with me or other services I provide and you want more to be like specific reading, these readings will be recordings of that. I'm just going to look into the energy, read it, and then share it with you. And you will be able to see and witness how this is playing out in your life. And if you need assistance because you feel, oh, there's a lack of clarity there, I'm willing to provide that. And this is one of my offerings that Spirit said, you can do this work now. Because every single thing that I can do is I need to be in alignment with that. And I need to be there myself. Otherwise, it's just mumbo jumbo, right? So the thing is, like I said before, our path is becoming less and less oriented towards teaching. It's more like harbingers, the synthesizers we are of this new reality. And we can only do that by something we've already embodied and mastered. So these beloved readings are now available. And this was what I had to share with you today. There's so much coming through. I know I could say much more. There is much more. I'm sure I forgot something, but usually when I have my daily runs, right, I'm kind of like downloading so much. Like, I hope I'll remember everything when I put it out there in the video and when I do this writing down on my whiteboard. But, whatever is meant to come through for this time and does come through is what is meant to. And if it doesn't, it's going to always be time for it in the next video. So, my sweet beloveds, if you're finding that space when you are in almost like in this torn feeling like, should I be acting out of selfless love? Should I be acting from this? We are actually experiencing a merge. There is no this or that, but what we're doing now, we're finding, we're not even finding, we're just, maybe part of it lies in finding it, but we're creating an aspect of us, which is not this or that, but how is this a merge? And this is our new frontier stage for a lot of us. And this is why it's so new, because it is a new space. Not a lot of masters have gone there before. It's okay, you do this mastery, you don't ascend and go somewhere, but now you become a conscious living conduit for that cosmic beloved mastery. It's who you've always, in a way, wanted to be and who you are. But it's like everyone has the potential, but not everyone will choose it. There's a lot of people who might have potential for mastery in this lifetime. I've met many who had awesome potential. Doesn't mean that they've chosen it. One thing else I want to say about the potential is that this selfless love, right, the love of all, it was a lot focused around the potential within someone. And because you've seen the good in someone, you've seen the potential, and they've shown you then maybe another reality that's embodied, and you were disappointed. There was a disillusionment taking place, and you felt almost like a loss of that, which you felt almost like this enigmatic energy. It was a beautiful soul connection. Wow, the person was so awesome. They had so much potential, but why are they not living it? And a lot of people stayed with that, and they continue to analyze why something or why some relationship isn't working because they have such an awesome soul connection or energy. It's because they're not bringing the focus back to themselves. And my Cosmic Beloved course teaches you how to do that, how to really master yourself and becoming your own true love source essence, so that this will then further be reverberated out, and it will eventually be experienced in that devotional partnership and communion, because these are new pathways, these are new footsteps. So the love of the potential self, that Newtonian utopia, can sometimes be, again, it's not just that, but also the reality. Or at the same time, some people are seeing things as just physical, just seeing through the physical appearances and what the person presents through their physical. What needs to be met now is, loving yourself, giving yourself understanding first, because we're not here to understand everyone. How? There's so many uniqueness within Source, right? So through our own understanding of the self, we can only then have a complete compassion, and through that compassion move to that selfless love and unity and selfless service, while already considering the self. So for us, loving others without considering the self will no longer apply now. Remember, the feminine, the Magdalene, the sisterhood of the rose, the courageous lioness, the fierce goddess, meeting her God within herself and living that out, is really coming up to the stage. It's like the whole new world opens up now because of that. And like I said, it's still initial stages of that. We're still kind of finding our way through. It's like being blindfolded and not always knowing how. Sometimes we're going to have uncomfortable conversations with other people that will bring those things out, and you kind of imagining in your mind how you're going to say something this time with real passion, and then you're like picking up the phone, oh shit, I don't know how, it's hard. It's like easy does it. Each time it will improve. Each time it will be more authentic. We maybe not get it right the first time. There's no such thing, right, even as getting it right. It's just trial and error, testing, assimilating, gathering, but in a new way. So we don't have to be wounded anymore, but we do have to do that mastering polarity for us to not be wounded anymore. It's a choice. But that choice comes through our spirit initiation. So if you're called, I have mastery courses on this. What I really always recommend to people who are asking themselves how to go, because I have so much content available for refinement of the soul work, I really always recommend mastery courses first. Then when you're prepared, it's how I did them, in what kind of sequence. Then the cosmic convergence, and from then on I have the galactic signature, multidimensional ascension, and cosmic beloved. So it's like stages, right? It's like ascension, right? Moving up, descension, and then moving up with that descended light again, and co-creating and partnering our earthly selves, our earthly vessels with spirit. So spirit is who we become. I mean, we can never fully embody all of the spirit. Sometimes people say, I'm Holy Spirit incarnate. Holy Spirit is cannot be, put in one form. It's just that we become the essence of it, and in our own way, we're representatives of that in our own beautiful uniqueness. So thank you for watching today. Thank you for staying tuned, for encouraging, for sometimes sharing questions that I can maybe address in the videos. Sometimes there's a lot of you writing and you're just wanting to share with me. Sometimes people say, oh, I just want to be your friend. And I say, it's very hard for me to be friends and writing and typing emails with everyone, because as you see, a lot of the work that I do comes through a lot of contemplation and alone time that I need to gather all of this, to kind of synthesize. For example, my daily messages on Instagram, it might look like one message of this length, and it's like, oh, it's just one message she typed. But so much of the awareness work is behind, and no one sees that. No one sees that. How much I have to live through, contemplate through, share through in its own way. So every message is aligned through something I went through that spirit showed me it's important, and then kind of synthesizing that, the knowing and the physical experiential patterning, the pathway of that unison. So it's a lot of things that people don't always see. And because a lot of us, like people work on different levels. Some people work with physical aspects, some of us work with consciousness. And it's just like nothing is more or less important. It's just different aspects and angles of source. But because of that unseen energy, people don't always see it. They don't always see the contribution. So because of that, I always value and thank you. And to those of you who are appreciating that, by kind of, kind of that mutual respect and mutual reciprocation, and in a way supporting by donating or whatever you feel called to do. So thank you so much. And I always love to hear your feedback. But do check out the new Beloved readings because I'm so excited. It's such a huge transformation that occurred for me just now, with the knowing of the joy that came through for me to be able to provide this service work of the template of what I've established so far. So thank you, those of you who are so faithfully tuning into Ascension Pioneers, and even those of you who are new. I love you all the same and so very much. As always, with purity of grace, and as always, so much love, wisdom, and you got it, power. So I'll talk to you very soon, very again. Take care. Bye-bye.
Welcome into